Welcome to FinFactor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dry Run Cash Flow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Laurent Marcelis, CFO at Enhesa, a global environment, health and safety and sustainability intelligence platform. Today, we'll discuss how treating EHS and sustainability data the same way a finance team treats the P&L should be a tool for decision-making, not just a compliance checkbox. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Blaine. Good to meet you, and thank you for inviting me to the show.
So this is an area I am not familiar with at all. So I was really excited to have you on the show because I always love learning about these things. Of course, in my world, we help businesses forecast their cash flow and their sales pipeline. It's all financial data. And what you guys help with is areas of reporting that are incredibly important for a business, but sometimes maybe overlooked and aren't being used to drive business decisions. And that's kind of where I want to start. Why is this data so important on the business side?
Well, what we see more and more, and I think we work for a number of large corporates in the world. So when we are talking to the customers, they are, of course, implementing or have implemented reporting on non-financial compliance. When we talk about non-financial compliance, it is compliance with environment regulation, with health regulation, with safety, with sustainability, but also with product and chemical supply compliance. And we typically help our customers to be compliant in all those spaces. Why is that important? Well, the costs of being non-compliant is, of course, huge, can be huge. And in the world we live today, where compliance is of essence and compliance is becoming much more and more difficult, we see that for those companies, managing the compliance for non-financial metrics, like I just mentioned it, is essential for their long-term company valuation and value creation. That is the essence of the non-financial compliance.
So now you mentioned this seems like sustainability and everything. This has been a growing topic over the last maybe I would say, from my point of view, maybe yours is different. My point of view is like the last 10, 15 years, it started to really elevate much more.
Yeah.
How have businesses been adapting to that, and where are you seeing them struggle the most with this change? Because a lot of these businesses have been around doing the same thing for a long time, and suddenly this is kind of thrown on their shoulders.
Well, I think there were, first of all, Enhesa, the company I'm working for, where we provide the compliance information to large corporates worldwide. We have been in business for 30 years. So indeed, like you say, for many people, EHS compliance is a topic of the last 5-10 years. And indeed, very valid. It has become much more important the last couple of years. Why? Well, to my opinion, what we see in the world is that the world is becoming much more fragmented. Perhaps in certain areas, Europe, US, there is less regulation. That's also a valid point compared to, for example, 5 years ago. We see that there is less regulation. But on the other hand, the world is becoming much more complex, where before everyone was moving a bit in the same direction with regulation. Now you see that it is a bit falling apart, or at least going into separate directions, and that US has a roadmap, Europe has a roadmap, China has a roadmap, all other countries have a roadmap. So the world economy is becoming much more fragmented, which means that for companies operating internationally, operating globally, the effort to be compliant is becoming much more difficult. And that is why this topic has increased in priority over the last 5 to 10 years, because we can say that probably the years before and the decades before, the world was not changing at a fast pace, which it is today, which is a challenge for all companies today to remain compliant.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, when you're trying to have compliance globally in all of these different regions where the regulations just keep getting changed every other day. And of course, that's something we see is businesses increasingly are doing business globally. There is just, I don't know if that was quite the norm 30 years ago, but it's become the norm. So I think that's, compounds on itself as well. So I wanted to dive in a little bit of, what are some of the things you've seen where this has really negatively affected businesses, like where sometimes they maybe don't recognize how much risk there is. And I know, before the show, we were talking a little bit about how basically just even the valuation of the company itself, even during M&A, like there's times where this could actually come back to haunt them. But I just want to dive into some of those stories where it has been a real negative consequence for a business because they haven't stayed on top of it.
No. Well, Blaine, you indeed mentioned M&A. That is a crucial topic, and I'm sure that a lot of people also following the show have done acquisitions in the past. Where I also talk about my career. To be honest, it's an evolution of the last years, where in the due diligence phase, typically the CFO is focusing on financial due diligence and on tax due diligence. And we try to exclude and we try to find all the nitty gritty things from a financial perspective and from a tax perspective. Now, of course, let's talk about environment. You're working on an acquisition. And of course, I can't go into detail of company X or Y, but it is quite obvious that if we're talking about being compliant with environmental regulation, and if that is not a key topic in your due diligence process, that you put yourself afterwards extremely at risk, because you might just pay a price where there is a lot of risk linked to that. And there are many examples. I can't comment on those. I can't comment on other companies. But it is obvious that if you don't put enough focus on that it can and will have an impact on your company valuation. And that is what you need to avoid at all time, of course, which is the case for acquisitions, but this is also the case in a business as usual, like you just mentioned previously. The world is changing faster and faster, and global players are also changing their supply chains. But with changing supply chains, there is also an impact on the compliance of the supply chains, because you move your business to other countries. You want to be resilient with your business. And all the time you need to ask the questions, what does it take to be compliant with all non-financial, because we are talking about a non-financial compliance. Because otherwise you put yourself at risk and it will impact you financially. That is the essence.
Yeah. So you're basically your company's a risk all the time, and it compounds when it's global. But as soon as you get into M&A, which you need that set up beforehand. It's not like, oh, hey, someone's interested in buying our company, let's start fixing it now. It's not just even the valuation. So many deals die in the last mile, like right near the end. They fail, and you wouldn't want that sort of lack of compliance to be the thing that actually potentially even kills a deal.
Valid point, and I think the essence of the point is that I think a lot of companies, and also myself, when I was working for previous companies, the compliance, the non-financial compliance started with reporting, with checkboxes. Hey, look at this. We have a lot of checkboxes. We are compliant. And yes, it is important, like you do your accounting in a diligent way. You need to also have all metrics and reporting for your non-financial compliance in place. But that is, of course, only the starting point. If you have that, the essential part is that you can use the data and that your investors, potential investors in an acquisition or in a sale process, that they are able to have access to all that data, to analyze the data, to have your compliance information, to check materiality of the compliance or non-compliance. So I see a very similar evolution what we have had in the finance part, where in essence, finance was about recording and reporting, but then evolving to using the financial information based on that information to become, as a financial specialist, partner of the business. Exactly the same is happening and has been accelerating the last 5 to 10 years in the non-financial compliance information. We need to have the data. We need to be able to report. We need to be able to analyze. We need to be able to see what's coming. Why? Because that is strategically important to the company. That is strategically important to investors. That is linked to your cost of capital. That is linked to your cost of financing. So I see the evolution over time, and I see that gradually it's becoming equally important as your financial reporting, but also as the financial analysis for all of your stakeholders that want to have a look at your company.
Yeah. So, and this is like we're seeing this. I've had a number of guests on the show talking about the increasingly expanding role of the CFO, and sometimes a crossover with CFO that's actually kind of a COO as well, like just really working on operations. And so this is kind of the place where it seems like this needs to sit, is in the office of the CFO in there, because it can have such a massive impact on the finances. How do you envision that? Like, is that the right place for it to sit? Why? And how do you envision it kind of being centered with the CFO, but also how does that roll out amongst the rest of the organization?
Of course, being a CFO, I can't stress enough that that is an important role within the company. As a small joke aside, but I see really the CFO as a sort of a steward for long-term value creation for the company, and there are some words in there. Long-term, we can't deny the short term, but it's really, you have to have the vision for the future. Long term, if we talk about sustainability, it is essential in long-term value creation. Value creation, of course, we know, and it's not that it's becoming less important, that all financial reporting and analysis is very essential to the CFO. But from a risk point, because investors are demanding it, the non-financial part is becoming equally important. And so non-financial reporting compliance is also part of the long-term value creation for which the CFO is the primary responsible to challenge everything that happens in the business. That's the way I see it. For the rest, if you look at it from a distance, it is very similar to financial reporting. It is based on collecting a lot of data. It is also looking forward to everything what is changing. It is reporting on the data. It is analyzing the data and using the data to make actually better business decisions. And what you see happening is that there is even an integration, that it is not, we have on the left side our financial reporting and on the right side our non-financial reporting. But if you look at, for example, the IFRS reporting standards, they are also more integrating the financial and the non-financial reporting, because they realize that both of it is essential for all stakeholders in the company and for the value of the company. So it comes together, and it's does it need to be, because I know that there are also a lot of companies where the CFO is not directly responsible for compliance, non-financial, but at least the CFO should have access to the data so that he can use the data also for all activities he does within the company.
So I've got a question here. It's kind of a two-part question. First, if let's say a CFO's watching us today and saying, okay, I know I need to get on top of this, how do they take the first step? But the second part of the question is, what if someone else is already responsible for this, but the CFO is like, for the sake of the business, I need to start to take this over and start to bring it under the CFO's area of responsibility and accountability. How does the CFO take that first step to say, okay, let's get this under control and bring it, bring some structure and process to it?
I think on your first point, the essential answer is start with what is material or what can be a material risk for you as a company. Of course, that is an easy answer. People listening can say, yeah, okay, that's an easy answer, but where is my material risk? And so there needs to be some analysis. It is, of course, our space of business where Enhesa, as a company, we provide a platform to help our customers analyze compliance with, like I said, environment, health, safety, sustainability, product, chemicals. So the essential part is to analyze where there are material risks. And that is, of course, the area where you want to focus upon. There are so many things happening. There are so many things to do that start with a broad exercise, narrow it down to what is the most material and what can impact really the company and the business, and then gradually every year, upgrade your way of working. That is on the first part. On the second part, I really believe that this is within the DNA of the finance team and of the CFO. Even when we are talking about CSRD reporting, it also needs to be audited. So the way to work with the data, the way to capture the data, the way to report the data, the way to make it auditable, your data, is exactly the same in two domains. So if you would start with a blank page, where do you need to put it? Put it together with the other financial processes. Now, if a company does it in another way, equally, if it runs well, but it doesn't exempt the CFO from his responsibility to use the compliance data that is done by the compliance team for, like I said, the long-term value creation. He needs to have access to the data to analyze, and also from his point of view, to give direction to the company to the things that are happening in that domain. So it can't be separated because it is an integral part of the CFO's responsibility, because the compliance part has financial consequences, always. And that is the responsibility of the CFO. So you can't even say, oh, but that is not in my responsibility. It has financial consequences. So to my opinion, no CFO in the world can say compliance, that is about reporting, and for the rest, that's not my responsibility. No, impossible. It has financial impact. It needs to be addressed by the CFO.
Mm-hmm. So Laurent, this was a really, really interesting. I think you just hit every point with such clarity. I really appreciate that. How should someone get hold of Enhesa? How should they find you guys if they're looking for some help and they say we got to get going on this. We need a hand on this. How should they get hold of you?
Enhesa.com. You can find it on the website, and then you can also find more information on what we do for our customers to help them in this space. Like I said, we are there for 30 years to help some of the largest companies in the world to remain compliant, to remain resilient. And if you drop us a message, we'll certainly reach out.
Thank you so much, Laurent. This was just a really terrific conversation. I really appreciate your time, and I want to mention to all of you out there, if you and your team are buried in spreadsheets, please come see us at dryrun.com. We will help you get out of those spreadsheets. We're going to give you a clear cash flow forecast for your management team, but also give you the control that you need to be able to get out of those spreadsheets and have something that's really intuitive, quick, and will just nail down those cash flow forecasts. So come visit us at dryrun.com. Appreciate your time, Laurent. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, Blaine.